after my father's funeral, who was a major shareholder, my brother-in-law suddenly spoke about the inheritance. The stocks and $5 million inheritance will be inherited by my wife, the eldest daughter. My sister and her has been elated at the prospect of a windfall. Were taken aback when the lawyer informed them, unfortunately, "Bro, you do not have the right to inherit. I am Greg Johnson, a 42-year-old office worker. My family consists of my wife and 2 children. My father was a major shareholder in a certain company. Despite being 78 years old, he was full of vitality and still actively working. Brooke, my older sister, has always been a troublemaker, causing constant worry for our parents. Now in middle age, she leads a carefree life without a job. I've never been fond of her and have always kept my distance. When my sister was about to turn 50, she suddenly brought home a man, announcing her intention to marry. This man, Aaron Warner, was significantly younger and handsome. However, his demeanor lacked restraint, and his eyes had a bad look, making it hard for me to take a liking to him. My sister, as if it were her right, demanded our father pay for her wedding. She then quickly squandered the money and unapologetically asked for more. This left our father perplexed and troubled by her actions. "It's going to be mine someday anyway. So what's the problem?" I watched my selfish sister with contempt. However, barely a year after her marriage, I received news that my father had collapsed while playing golf. He passed away a few days later. Devastated by my father's sudden death, I was overwhelmed with grief. His friends, too, were shocked by the news, flooding us with messages. But I had no time to mourn, as there was much to be done. In place of my distraught mother, I started preparing for the funeral. She was too shaken, and I had to support her firmly. As usual, my sister went out and offered no help. Eventually, the funeral concluded. Exhausted, my mother and I finally got a moment to rest. But the next day, a lawyer visited our home to discuss the inheritance. My father had left a will. My mother and I already knew its contents, but my sister and brother-in-law, who were oblivious, suddenly interrupted and said something shocking. The stocks and $5 million inheritance. It should all go to my wife, the eldest daughter. So don't take it without permission, okay? What? My mother and I were speechless with surprise. We did it, bro. Now we're part of the elite too. Far from feeling sorrow over my father's death, Aaron was ecstatic, clenching his fist in a triumphant gesture. Well, actually, the lawyer, surprised, raised his voice. "What is it now?" As my sister glared at him, the lawyer looked at her and her husband seriously. "Unfortunately, bro, you do not have the right to inherit." My sister and her husband displayed surprised expressions, saying, "Oh, that must be a lie. There's some mistake." "Yeah, it must be. The eldest daughter of this house is Brooke, right?" Like his earlier statements. My brother-in-law seemed to have been counting on the inheritance meant for my sister. As his gaze shifted, however, in front of them, the lawyer calmly announced, "Were you not aware? Her father and Brooke are not related by blood." At that moment, My sister's complexion changed, and she turned to look at our mother. "Mom, what does this mean?" Mother had an indescribable expression on her face. I had heard that my sister and I had different fathers, but it seemed this was kept secret from my sister. She became furious and started shaking our mother's shoulder. "Mom, explain this to me, bro. I'm sorry I kept silent. You are the child of my previous husband." While being shaken by my sister, our mother managed to say just that. Since childhood, my sister had always teased me, saying, "Dad loves me more." But now, she seemed unable to accept the reality. But if she was adopted, she would still have inheritance rights, right? Aaron suddenly raised his voice. "Right, bruh. Yes, that's right." However, our mother firmly denied it. There was no adoption. The two showed disbelief again. "That can't be. I'm the eldest daughter, and even Dad said so," my sister yelled angrily, glaring at me. "I won't let you get all the inheritance." I felt anger at her words and retorted, "After all the money Dad gave you, you still want more. You shut up. I'm his daughter. I have the right to inherit." My sister shouted in anger, and my brother-in-law agreed with her. "Exactly. It's natural to spend money for one's daughter," I sighed. Spending on a normal daughter would be no issue. However, the money my sister had spent was for debt repayment and other purposes. "Mrs. Gregg, what about this?" The lawyer, who had been quiet until then, started speaking. "Why don't we let Brooke see the will, too?" "What will?" "I don't know about any will." My sister said this with a panicked look. However, her ignorance was her own doing. My father wanted to discuss and decide the contents of the will with us, and when creating it, he had asked our family to be present. But my sister took it lightly and went out with friends instead. When I pointed this out, my brother-in-law glared at my sister sternly. "Hey, what are you thinking? Skipping something so important. So, what will you do?" In response to the lawyer's question, they looked at each other and then said, "We'll hear it out." When the lawyer revealed my father's will, it clearly stated the transfer of property to my mother and me. It also explained why my sister was not adopted. Initially, my father had considered it. However, my sister had always been harsh towards me, her half-brother. Since childhood, and her reckless spending led to my father's disappointment. As described in the document. "That can't be." Realizing she had no right to the inheritance, my sister was visibly shocked. "Damn it. What are you going to do about this?" The one who suddenly raised his voice was my brother-in-law. "You lied to me. You said we were getting a big sum." My brother-in-law's sudden change of attitude left my mother and sister speechless. But I thought his true nature had been revealed. I had always been suspicious of his money-grubbing behavior. Probably, he married my sister thinking she had money. "Bro, don't come back until you get the money." "What? Aaron, why would you say that?" "Bro, I thought we were finally going to join the ranks of the wealthy. What a pity." After shoving my sister aside roughly, my brother-in-law left the room silently. My sister, with a face red with anger, continued to rage at us. "Mom, Why didn't you ask to have me adopted? That's because it's unfair that only mom gets the inheritance. I had the right to receive it too. But you didn't insist, and that's why this happened. It's too much. I'm sorry, Brooke. While perplexed, my mother could only watch as my sister cried and screamed. This is terrible. This is stingy. I was appalled by my sister's outrageous behavior, but the lawyer, used to such situations, remained calm. Why does he get to receive it all? Because I'm Dad's biological son. When I stated this clearly, my sister, wide-eyed, came at me. You should never have been born. I thought that even if I hadn't been born with my sister's character, my father would likely have made the same decision. However, before I could say anything, the lawyer calmly advised, Brooke, if you keep this up, we'll have to call the police. My sister seemed startled by this. Given her history of repeated theft, she was sensitive to the mention of the police. Brooke, I don't know what to say. As my mother spoke tearfully to my sister, she clicked her tongue and left the room. Half a year passed, and the inheritance proceedings were completed without issue. My sister and brother-in-law grumbled for a while, but they couldn't stand against the lawyer's efficiency. My mother gave my sister a small amount of money, but I had no intention of interfering. The frustrating part for our family was that the two had disappeared. Their blatant greed was so evident that even our relatives were lost for words. One day, my wife suggested that my mother, daughter, and I go out to eat. Since my father's passing, my mother had been down, but she showed smiles when with her granddaughter. Mom, why don't you live with us? But, Brooke still comes home occasionally. Sis only comes around to beg for money, doesn't she? How long does she plan to keep this up? The reason Mom defends my sister is that she is her blood-related child. Also, there might be concern that if we visit our family home, my sister might cause trouble again. Understanding that, I told her to take her time thinking about it, and then drove Mom to our family home. However, upon arrival, we encountered something unexpected. The lights were on in our supposedly empty home. It wasn't the time for the helper to come, so, puzzled, I parked the car. Let's go up and have some coffee. With Mother suggesting so, we got out of the car and headed to the entrance. But the moment we approached the door, a car came rushing in. Mom, watch out. Hearing my daughter ahead of me, I shielded my wife with my body. And ouch. I managed to dodge, and the car just grazed me. But I was thrown against a nearby flower bed, hurting myself badly. The car stopped after hitting the garage door. Are you hurt? Dad, are you okay? My wife and daughter rushed over, supporting me. Mother was trembling in shock at the sudden event, understandably. From that moment on, a day of turmoil began. I was taken to the hospital by ambulance and had to be hospitalized, though briefly. I later heard that Aaron Warner, my brother-in-law, was driving the car. According to the police, he explained that he mistook the accelerator for the brake. However, I had my doubts about that story. Amidst all this, my sister and mother visited me in the hospital, Mother left briefly to arrange flowers, and during that time, my sister coldly looked at me and said, "You're only tough in body, how?" with a slightly disappointed tone. I couldn't help but give her a smile. If I had died in the accident, Mom would inherit everything, right? Messed up your plan. I said this a bit sarcastically, and my sister looked uneasy. You planned this, didn't you? When I asked, my sister looked away. But I won't be accepting Mom's share, so it won't work out for you. My sister looked surprised at this. She probably thought I would naturally accept it. I have a wife and kids, so I pass the inheritance to them. It's not strange for the head of the family to think that way. Even so. And besides, I've made a will early, like Dad did. My sister was taken aback at this. What? So that means? Yeah. Unfortunately, my share of the inheritance won't go to Mom. My sister stared at me, then began to shake with anger. There's $5 million, right? You could at least share a bit. When I immediately refused, my sister furiously grabbed my collar. I'm your sister. We should split it. Whether it was the amount of the inheritance that drove her mad. She continued to scream in a very aggressive voice. I felt pity for my sister. It's that greedy attitude that disappointed Dad. Don't you get it? My sister's face turned even redder, and she grabbed my neck. Brooke, stop it. Mother, who had just returned, scolded her loudly. Then, the nurses, called by the nurse call button, arrived and escorted my sister out of the room. Mother seemed to want to protect my sister, but my sister had lashed out at her too as she left. Why did she turn out like this? Hearing Mother say this sadly, I felt a pang in my heart. Later, Mother's health deteriorated and she fell. Gradually weakening, my wife and I started visiting the family home more frequently to support her. But this seemed to upset my sister. Probably, she encountered my wife when coming to ask for money or heard about it from Mother. One day, my sister called my cell phone. From now on, we will take care of Mom. You guys don't need to come. What's this all of a sudden? However, my sister wasn't listening and said, "We've already decided," before hanging up. My wife told me she had been turned away by my sister too. Concerned about how my sister, who had no experience in household chores or caregiving, would manage, I quickly contacted Mother. To my surprise, I found out that my brother-in-law had experience in caregiving. Mother was still independent, not yet in a worrying state. This reassured me. However, within just a month, Mother was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. It was said to be due to a medication dosage error. When we rushed to the hospital, Mother was shockingly weak. The doctors also seemed puzzled by her condition. I don't think such a mistake has ever happened before. I left my wife to look after Mother and went to our family home, which was in a terrible state. Despite my mother's love for cooking, the fridge, usually full of fresh ingredients, was empty. Shockingly, even the helper had been quickly dismissed. Feeling ashamed of trusting my sister even a little, anger surged within me. Checking the safe where valuables were kept, I found that a large amount of money was missing from Mother's passbook. The passbook with the inheritance was safe in a bank locker, but there was hardly any of the money meant for living expenses left. I returned to my mother, explained the situation, and revealed my sister's betrayal. Brooke did such a thing. Mother seemed unaware of the passbook issue and showed a shocked expression. But when asked about the medication error, she explained that my brother-in-law had prepared it and looked troubled. "Mom, I don't think you should let them into that house anymore." "Right. They said they'd take care of you, but the state of that house was the worst. And you've gotten so thin. Haven't they been feeding you properly?" Speaking with genuine concern, Mother hung her head. "Mom, let's live together. I'll build a new house, and we can live there together." Moved by my suggestion, Mother shed tears. However, her condition continued to worsen. Despite the doctor's best efforts, the issue with my sister seemed to weigh heavily on her. Ultimately, Mother passed away without recovering. When I went to the family home for the funeral, all the valuable items had disappeared from the house. It seemed that my sister and brother-in-law, in need of money, had taken them. Standing in the desolate place, I was overcome with anger. I had to find a way to make my sister take responsibility, both for Mother's sake and as atonement for what she had done. I resolved to do something. The day after Mother's funeral, my sister and I met at the lawyer's office to discuss the inheritance. "Condolences, but as her daughter, I'm entitled to Mother's inheritance." My sister said this with a sense of superiority, which made me laugh involuntarily. She seemed to be under some misconception. "Let's open the will, then." As the lawyer revealed the contents of the will, my sister turned pale. "You're joking." "Why?" "Brooke, you are not entitled to any of the inheritance. This is in accordance with the deceased's wishes." My brother-in-law started to get angry, but the lawyer had nothing else to say except repeat the same thing. "This must be a mistake. Brooke is her child, isn't she?" My brother-in-law suddenly became furious, throwing things off the table. "Are you trying to trick us? We won't let you get away with this. Give us the inheritance now." "Aaron, you planned to kill Mother, didn't you?" When I asked, my brother-in-law glared at me unpleasantly. "Huh? I wouldn't do such a thing." "Then why did the medication error occur?" My brother-in-law appeared annoyed. "I don't know anything about that. Greg, it's impossible that I can inherit. You must have done something." My sister was getting more agitated. "Now, I'm even behind on my condo payments." I was shocked. She hadn't rushed to Mother's side after hearing of her death because she was busy with such matters, hoping for the inheritance. "Really, there's nothing left?" My sister pressed the lawyer. "That seems to be the case. Let me explain in detail." The lawyer explained the details of the inheritance, but ultimately, after deducting what my sister had withdrawn and sold, there was hardly anything left for her to inherit, and my sister held her head in dismay. I had discussed this in advance with the lawyer, so I was satisfied with the outcome. "Stop joking. There can't be so little." My mother and I had not told my sister, But most of Mother's property had already been distributed to my children, her grandchildren. Therefore, there was already little left to inherit. However, my sister kept muttering her dissatisfaction. I felt nothing but resentment towards my sister, who had lived off the money given by father and now mother. Mother thought she could rest easy knowing you would take care of her. But you just took her money. You're a true disgrace to our parents. I raised my voice in frustration. Caring for someone costs money, you know. Don't you understand? Then show me the receipts for what you spent on Mom's care. I'll cover any necessary expenses. As I extended my hand, my sister turned pale and was at a loss for words. I threw those away. That's not good. Without receipts, it can't be proven as evidence. Hearing the lawyer's words, my sister struggled to find a response. During this, my brother-in-law tried to calm me down. Greg, your sister is in a tough spot. Maybe you could help her out a bit, as family. I cannot. My immediate response left my brother-in-law speechless. I've been hurt by my sister for a long time. Frankly, I feel like it's karma. But you're the only siblings. Maybe just a little. He tried to say more, but I refused. I was filled with anger, and so was my brother-in-law, apparently. Damn it. If that accident had worked out, Brooke would have had the entire inheritance. What accident? Before I could ask for their, my brother-in-law started talking on his own. Because of this brother, things didn't go as planned. I was supposed to get a new car, but now there's barely enough money left even for repairs. My sister tried to stop him, but it was too late. That's a pretty serious statement. You could be accused of fraud. The lawyer held a recorder, smirking at my sister and brother-in-law. What the heck? Isn't that against the rules to do that? You agreed to our conversation being recorded at the beginning, didn't you? Caught by his own words, my brother-in-law's face turned pale. To him, I had one thing to say. Aaron, I will be pressing charges about that accident. Don't joke. Where's the evidence? The evidence has just been provided by you. My sister, crying, began to hit my brother-in-law. You idiot. It's all your fault. Why did you say that? Later, my brother-in-law faced legal consequences for his actions. Additionally, unresolved suspicions about his past emerged, requiring police involvement for some time. My sister, as an accomplice, was said to face lesser charges. However, my sister, struggling with her condo payments, was turned away by relatives when she asked for money. In contrast, I chose to work earnestly and not rely on inheritance. Now, receiving stock dividend products has become a small pleasure in my life.